Hey there, welcome back to another video. So I wanted to start a new series of game recommendations where I just recommend a bunch of games that I think that you should play in case you're looking for a new game and you're not sure what to play. The first game I wanted to recommend is Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which I recently finished. So let's start with what the game is about. You play as Ori, who tries to help Ku, which is one of his friends who's an owl with a broken wing. He tries to repair the ring and they go flying, but they accidentally fly into a storm in another land called Niwen and become separated. And now Ori has to try and find their friends again and save the forest, which has become corrupted. I mean, it's a pretty good story. It's quite generic, but it worked mostly. There's an antagonist who, I mean, they're not the most interesting antagonist ever, but they're alright. And it's interesting how the game gets you to feel a little bit sorry for them as they give you a backstory, but I won't spoil that too much. Let's move on to the technical aspects of the game. I didn't really have too many problems, however. I mean, this might be a problem with my Nintendo Switch, which I was playing it on, but there was a section where my game froze, and I had to hold the power button on my Switch for a duration of time to get it working again. It was a bit frustrating because there was a section where you have to concentrate quite a lot and do some precise platforming. So it's a bit frustrating that it froze, but luckily it was at the start or something, so it wasn't too bad, but it's just something to note. Although I don't know whether that's really a problem with the game or the Nintendo Switch itself. As for the story, I mean, I like the storytelling. There's a lot of show don't tell, which is sort of where you don't have characters straight up telling you exactly what is going on at every moment of the story. Um, there's a lot of you have to interpret what's going on. I mean, the story isn't too in depth, so if you're looking for an in depth story here, you're not really gonna get it. But it works for what it's trying to do, and sometimes it's better if the stories aren't too complicated. Because to be honest, I can't always be bothered with looking up stories. Sometimes you have to look at YouTube videos that explain what the story is of the game you just played. And sometimes I just cannot be bothered with doing that. So this is quite nice, and it's more focused on the gameplay rather than the story. As for the platforming, I mean, it's some of the best platforming in any game I've ever played. It's a bit similar to Hollow Knight. However, you're not gonna like this, but I didn't really like that game. I mean, both Hollow Knight and Ori are difficult games, but I just found Hollow Knight to be too frustrating. There will be times where you die and the checkpoint that you have to go back to is quite far away, which I always find really frustrating because you feel like you've lost quite a lot of progress. The abilities you get greatly benefit the platforming, although sometimes I wish that they didn't feel so situational. For example, you get a grappling hook at one point, and I thought, oh, that might be quite cool if you can grapple to any surface, but it's only to specific points, which feels like it's a bit limited. They could have done it to any surface. You might be able to see in some of the gameplay that I'm using the grappling hook. Well, I'm not using it, it's the footage, but it doesn't attach to every single point that you want it to. It's only to specific bits, which is a bit annoying. They could have definitely expanded on that. There is one ability that you get that really helps your platforming, but unfortunately you only get it at the end of the game or towards the end of the game, so it feels a little bit limited. You do get a version of the ability, but it can only be used on certain things, and to be honest, whilst I like the platforming, I just felt like sometimes certain abilities like only work for specific things, and they could have been made a bit more generalized. So like the grappling hook, as I said, being able to tether to any point would have made it a lot better, but it still works well enough. And the platforming is really good itself. It can be really difficult though, but it is generally pretty good. The art direction and graphics are amazing, and these benefit the world itself. Every area looks great, such as the water area or the snow area. You're free to go wherever you want, to an extent. Some areas you can't access until you unlock certain abilities. You have to go to different areas to get those abilities and then go back. But quite a lot of games do that nowadays, so it's mostly fine. And the music benefits the exploration because it's great and it keeps you interested. There's good use of space. The mold world depths, for example, feels claustrophobic because of the narrow spaces you have to traverse. And I think that's the kind of idea that they were trying to convey. And NPCs, they make the world feel more alive and can give you side quests. However, to be honest, I didn't really do any of the side quests. I don't always do side quests in games, to be honest. Sometimes I find that some of them are good and other times they can be a bit of a waste of time unless you just generally enjoy the game itself. But I can't really comment on the side quests because I didn't really do any. But the world itself, as I was saying, is pretty good. The combat itself is very good. You do get quite a lot of options for combat, like as in what kind of weapon you want to use. However, I felt like it was quite easy to miss a few combat options once you find what works. There was one point for one boss where I had to get this sort of fireball ability where you can shoot fireballs because it was just too difficult beforehand. But after I got that, it was really useful. And I kind of just used that as long with, there's like a sort of hammer ability where you like use a hammer as an attack that I use like for most of the game. And it's not overpowered, there's no one combat option that is overpowered, but it was certainly very good. I feel like the reason why I didn't really explore other combat options was because you have to pay for it with the in-game currency. I don't mean with your real money, don't worry. But you have to pay for it with the in-game kind of currency. And to be honest, I felt like that could be a bit grindy, as in having to kill the same enemies over and over again just to get that currency, which I couldn't really be bothered to do, so I did not do that. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the difficulty, because sometimes this can be a make or break with games. I mean, if it's too hard, sometimes you kind of just want to give up straight away. I mean, Demon's Souls. I mean, I like Elden Ring and I like Dark Souls 3, but Demon's Souls, strangely, was just way too hard for me. I don't really know why. But for Ori, it's a challenging game, but most of the time it feels fair. One of the hardest bosses was actually early on in the game for me, but this depends on what order you decide to fight them in, because you get to choose what order you want to fight most of the main bosses in. Although I won't spoil the boss that I found particularly difficult, but it did take me like quite a few days just to defeat it. I didn't want to give up because I was enjoying the game. And I think that's something that will make you push past the difficulty instead of just giving up. The bosses are not the only challenge, the platforming is too. I mean, the snowy area was just really difficult. There was one point where, again, I was ready to give up. I was like, is this even possible? Like, of course it's possible, but like, I was ready to give up. and luckily I didn't, and I finished the game. But yeah, some of the platforming can take quite a few attempts to do, but you shouldn't let it put you off playing the game if you're looking to play it. It's not too difficult to a point where it will get in the way of you having fun with the game. I would give the game a 9 out of 10 overall, and I would definitely recommend it if you like platforming games and don't mind the challenge occasionally. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like and subscribe, and if you'd like me to do more game recommendation videos, please do say so in the comments. It really helps a lot. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.